ask before you app. Like, please stop and ask somebody to review the safety of this before you put it in the hands of students.
Bob, we've got a great episode today. It's sort of like two for the price of one. We have two guests in this episode, and at the end, we even in with a half-off discount. What a deal!
I don't even know what to say to that, Alex, but I do have this to say about our guest, is we have talked to a number of AI experts who have given us great ideas on how students can use AI, how teachers can be more efficient, and even administrators, and how we can ease the burden that has come up across our certified staff. But today we're going to start in the beginning, how to develop a policy, what to look for in AI tools that we should be aware of for student data privacy, and what pitfalls there may be in front of us so that we can keep everybody safe.
Yeah, it's a super important topic. I'm really glad that we've got experts on that. And one of those experts is even a lawyer. So guys, you're getting a super great deal by listening to the podcast today. Free legal advice. Let's get into the episode. We have a really exciting episode today. So we have two guests, one from school, one from law. I'll introduce them in just a second to talk about AI ethics, as well as some of the legal implications associated with AI, something that a lot of us are going through. So we have first Dr. Laura Spencer. Laura is the Chief Academic Innovation Officer at Elite Academic Academy. We also have Gretchen Shipley, who is the chair of the EdTech practice at Fagan, Friedman, and Fullfrost, also known as F3 Law. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So can each of you tell us a little bit about yourselves and also how you ended up working together? Laura, why don't you start?
Sure. So I am a 5-year Army veteran who then went into education. I've been in education now. This is my 25th year. I started out as a middle school English language arts teacher, just doing my thing every day, and fascinated with ed tech and decided that there was more to the world. So I've been an ed tech director. I've been an IT director. My passion is the intersection between curriculum and innovation. So my title now is Chief Academic Innovation Officer. And funny story, which will connect me to Gretchen, is I have followed Gretchen Shipley for years. In our world, Gretchen is like, woo, woo. And so I actually was at a session where she was talking about different legal issues, and AI came up, and I looked over at my friend Nisha and I said, gosh, we really need to write a course about this AI stuff. Like, this is too much for me to handle as an ed tech director. I need some help here. And Nisha walked up to Gretchen and said, hey, we're writing this course and we'd love for you to be involved. And I'm such a fangirl, and it's been an amazing journey. And I'm just glad to be right next to her in this podcast with you today. So thanks for having me.
That's awesome. Laura. Gretchen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
That tough shoes to fill there. Laura, thank you. That was sweet. So my name is Gretchen. I have been in education law for 25 years. And F3 Law, we just represent school districts, educational institutions, K-12, higher ed, but we are lawyers just for schools to help them navigate their challenges. And we represent schools nationally. And I, about 10 years ago, really started getting into student data privacy, negotiating contracts. The more technology came into schools, the more that presented some legal challenges. And so it really carved out a niche area where we have a whole practice dedicated just to education technology now, which I head up. And so AI has become a really fascinating issue in education. And we do a lot of presenting and model policies and working with schools throughout the country on this issue, which is where I ran into Laura. I was giving a presentation at a conference and we joined up, and we've been doing some great work together to help support schools.
Awesome.
Laura, I can relate when I go to conferences with Alex. Same thing, like kissing babies, shaking hands. I call him the mayor. Everybody knows him, wants to be around him. So I can relate to
feel it, right?
That sort of feeling, right? My question, the two of you come together and develop this AI ethics course for K-12 leaders, and it's the first one I've heard about, and what a perfect combination of technology and instruction and the legal side. Can you tell us a bit about how the two of you got involved with AI ethics and this project with Q?
Sure. So like I said, when I saw Gretchen, she always talks about emerging tech, right? And what we need to consider as leaders. AI is a scary landscape for many of us. We don't understand it. We're not quite sure where it's going. And so as an ed tech leader, I was just looking for somebody to help navigate the way forward. never really considered that it could be me. But then when we started this conversation, what I realized is so much of the training that we get in education is fear-based. It's take this course, and if you do this wrong, you could lose your credential, you could go to jail. And although that stuff is important, what's important to me is to educate and say, but how can we use this stuff? And I think that's where Gretchen and I kind of came into play in a really nice way as we built this course. Is Gretchen can tell me, here's the parameters, and then within those parameters, I'm able to say, so here's then what we can do with it. And it just became this beautiful merging of kind of the do's, the don'ts, and the how to move forward. And we just started writing this course. It came together so quick once we started because there was so much synergy in the room. And then Nisha, who was like she's not really a silent partner, but in the sense of she connected us, and that magic happened, and it just took off from there.
And, as a lawyer, it's easy just to say, no, this is going to create legal liability. But my objective, I never want to stand in the way of innovation. I mean, especially in the world of AI, it is about future-ready learners, future-ready workforce. But as Laura mentioned, there's a lot of fear, whether it's from parents or I work closely with school boards and school administrators, because you read stories in the news. And so how do you bridge that gap? And the way we do it, or the way I primarily do it, is through trainings, as we've done with through our course, or it's also model policies or how to review a AI software contract and what you should be looking for, and just the real practical takeaways of how the ultimate goal is, how do we keep kids safe while they're navigating AI?
That's awesome. And the course is hosted by AI educators, and for our listeners, there's a link to the courses that we'll be putting in the show notes, as well as like a coupon code, right? So there will be a discount code for our listeners for 50% off on this course, and you'll be able to find that in the show notes for this episode. So, and thank you guys for extending that, and thank you to AI educators for that.
Yeah, no problem.
It's really great. It's really great.
Laura, you said something in your part that I related to completely. You said this AI is just too much to handle as a tech director, and I'm a fellow tech director. I shortened your title for. I realize there's innovation and curriculum in there, but I'll lump us together to make myself feel better.
Sure, of course.
But it really is too much. It's the truth of the matter, and it changes every day. It's changing. I'm in Ohio, and we just recently had, and Gretchen, I know you have offices in the Midwest, but I don't know if you're anywhere near us here in Ohio. But in Ohio, we just had Senate Bill 29 passed here over the summer, late summer, early fall, that had completely relates to student data privacy, not necessarily just AI, but student data privacy. So it is a big deal. And as I understand it, that law was copied essentially from Minnesota law, if I recall correctly, if I don't get it exactly right. But it's not, I'm sure Gretchen can speak to this as well. Ohio's not on an island. There are laws coming. There are ethical treatment we have to have of the student data privacy. So why is it that the student data privacy is particularly crucial in the AI context?
So with open generative AI, students or teachers may be sharing their educational records. You hear of the scenario where a teacher may take a student's report card, feed it into OpenAI to have it draft comments. Maybe it's a special education student's IEP, and they're going to have it, so they put information in about the student. Well, there's a federal law called FERPA, I believe it's the Family Educational Rights and Records and Privacy Act, that you're not allowed to share student educational records. I mean, the baseline rules, you're not allowed to share student educational records without parental consent. And so it's just a message that we need to make sure we're not inadvertently sharing an educational record or a student's personally identifiable information, their medical condition, their disability status, and putting that out into a large language model that, you're technically resharing it. So there's this, critical element on distinguishing, is it a AI for educational use solely that is closed and it's a closed universe and it may have more safety guardrails, or is it open generative AI, in which case you need to be really cautious about everybody needs to be cautious about putting their personally identifiable information into an open generative AI model.
I think on the education side, the other thing that's interesting about AI is in the past, when student data privacy has been breached, it's been like, oh, I put it into this website to create this account. So you were very cognizant that you were supplying this data, right? It just seemed like a transaction and it happened. But with AI, there's so much of, I didn't even think about that, right? I met an educator at a conference and he was so excited to tell me that he had taken this spreadsheet of student data, put it in AI, and that's what he's like, report card comments. And I said, but you stripped it first, right? And just that moment of his face, and I realized, of course, his answer was, of course I did. But you could tell that he had not. So I was like, oh, you're not my educator. So, but the key here, right, with AI is it's pervasive. And so I think it just happens, right? People are just like, oh, this will be quick. Or I don't want to grade this essay. Let me just download the essay and pop it into AI. Well, that title page might have a lot of information about a student depending on where you are, right? So you're not thinking it through. Whereas in the past, you were like, I've signed up for this technology. I have to enter this information about my student. So accounts are created. You thought about it. And then that's my worry now in the ed tech world, Bob, is I don't know that they're always thinking about the data that they're putting into those models.
So particularly the open models, but even the closed models, I guess I have some questions with regards to like COPA, right? And I know early on it's beginning to get settled, but I don't think it's even settled. Right now, I don't care if you're Microsoft, you're Google, you're Toddle, it doesn't matter. There are so many tools where they've changed the age requirement of students in order to access student design tools. I guess Toddle's more faculty oriented, but Google and Microsoft, we're partners at Educational Collaborators, we're partners with both. And since they've launched Gemini and Copilot respectively, they've changed the ages of students allowed to access those. What's going on there from more of a legal as well as an ethical management standpoint?
Well, I'll just mention the Federal Trade Commission met this week to overhaul the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. So we're still trying to wrap our hands around it and wrap our brains around it. So what are the implications is something that I do think there will be more information coming out in the coming weeks. I think it's challenging to navigate. I think the bigger issue is a lot of online tools say they're for 18 and over, or they say 13 and over. But in order for schools to implement them, they may be, I think that is the software companies protecting themselves. Maybe they're complying with the law. And so then that is part of the review process that a school district, whether it's your IT team or your contracts team at an administrative level, needs to be reviewing, what data is being collected, how is it being reshared, and are there age restrictions? Are we complying with their terms, regardless of whether it's 13 or 18?
Laura, you and I both deal with those early adopter teachers who rush out and as soon as they hear a new AI is released, or a friend of a friend tells them that you should use this, and they move to this one and move to that one. And then we have those people that drag behind. And maybe those people who are dragging behind are helping us right now with this. But with those early adopters in rushing forward, how do we balance we need to develop a policy with we want you to make the best use of this? Because it really is, of all the things we've heard that we're going to make teachers more effective and more efficient, this is the game changer. So how do we balance that?
So I think, first of all, there needs to be trust and communication. So Gretchen said she doesn't want to be the no person in the legal world. It's the same in tech. We're usually the no people. And so because we're usually the no people, teachers just stop coming to us and they just do what they're going to do. They go to a conference, they see this cool tool. They're like, I'm just not going to tell Bob. I'm just going to come and try it out and see if it's good, right? And then something happens down the road and we get an email saying, oh, there was a data breach. And I think, well, that's okay. We don't use that tool. And then come to find out, I had 3 teachers who were using that tool. So open communication is key. For me, I will always tell teachers, come to me, let me support you. Let's see what you're doing. And so that way I'm in front of it. I think, and it's something I had not considered until you were asking that question, as much as we talk about policies and such for all these different tools, I'm actually wondering why I don't have an early adopter innovation policy. If you are one that wants to take the plunge, what might that look like? What contractual obligations do I have to you? Do you have to me? Do we have to? Whatever innovation you want that to be is something that now I'm going to write a note after this and go explore that idea, because there's always something else, right? Right now it's AI. There's a teacher somewhere who's trying something else that I don't know about. And so we have to support that within context. But I will tell you, I thought AI was rolling out slow, right? I said to myself, I haven't heard much about this yet. This is good. It's giving me a chance to explore. That wasn't the case. I had teachers share with me, look how I modified curriculum and made a personalized lesson plan for this student. I put in that they like soccer and they like donuts and they like brown cows, and it made a lesson plan for Science Standard 6. And so it was there. You can't assume that silence means they haven't adopted the things that are out there. And so it's a battle. I don't have the answer, Bob, but now, great, thanks. I will get on that next week.
Well, and even if you've got Learn Platform or some of those monitoring tools in there, they're probably doing that innovation at home, right?
Yes.
And I love that idea. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Exactly.
Like you're one of those innovative teachers. You need to have, they kind of want to be treated differently generally anyway. So this is an opportunity to kind of fold them in. I think that's a great idea.
Gretchen, what did you have to add?
Yeah, so where I have seen this come into play is, first of all, it's all about the training and the policy development, whether it's through our course or just generally. I do think there should be some words of no teacher is looking to violate a student's privacy. They are just looking to be either creative and innovative and more efficient. So I do think there needs to be some initial messaging about, if you are interested in adopting a new platform, please go through the proper channels at your school system, whatever that looks like. Whether it's a contract, someone reviews the terms and conditions, but it usually is, we call it ask before you app. Like, please stop and ask somebody to review the safety of this before you put it in the hands of students. For your early adopters who may be the head of the pilot program, when it comes to AI, what we typically do in the policy development process is have a stakeholder engagement group get together. And we've talked a lot about curriculum development and teachers, but AI is being used across all areas of district operations. So you really do want someone, maybe it's your labor partners. The labor negotiators have some concerns about this too. It might be your special ed department, your business operations, and of course your curriculum and instruction and your head of HR, but also those early adopters. They may be the teachers who are the most knowledgeable. I mean, this is not quote unquote an IT guy issue. It is all area of district operations, but you have some people who are far more knowledgeable in the district than others, and you don't want to leave them out of conversation. So they may be a really valuable voice for the district to see what the potential is.
And it's interesting because Gretchen shared that when I saw her at the event that sparked this whole course. That was exactly her thing, that whole stakeholder conversation. That was the moment when I thought, okay, that's going to take me time. And I know that people are using it now. And that was the impetus for the course. And I've told some superintendents that, look, the course is not about, after you're done with this, you're going to have all the knowledge and you're going to be able to go out and do everything in the world. It's a moment to slow down and consider what you're doing and why you're doing it and the best approach to do it. It gives you time to get those policies in place. It even mentions in there, what is the policy of your district? Who have you talked to about this? Like, it brings those questions to the table because a lot of us are rolling, right? I've got AI. I've also got VR. I've also got esports. I got CTE curriculum. I've got online books, right? I've got students who need Chromebooks. I got students without Wi-Fi. And so I don't have time to just do this. And so that was the impetus of the course, was give me some breathing space to figure this out, but also let my people who want to go, let me feel a little bit more comfortable that I've at least given them some parameters by which they can start exploring while we work on these other pieces.
So you guys, our job as hosts is to transition us to the next topics, but you've already done it so beautifully. I want to keep rolling.
We're seasoned pros.
You guys are great. So I want to stay in the policy space for a little bit. We talked a little bit about data privacy. I might bring us back to one more question on that. But one of the questions I was going to ask that you already sort of touched on, so I want to reframe it and see if you guys have anything to add, is kind of what's the process when you're designing these kinds of policies, right? Like who's involved and why? I loved that you shared the sort of breadth of people that should be involved in policies. And do we treat the creation of an AI policy different than the creation of other policies? Does, how should schools go about some of this policy creation, and then specifically for AI?
So I really encourage all schools, school districts to develop an AI policy so there is consistent communication for your staff and consistent expectations. How do you go about doing that? Where do you start? And many school district administrators feel overwhelmed with how many articles and model policies there are out there. And I really encourage, take a handful from some reputable sources. It may be your state administrators association. It may be, I have a model policy on my website, f3law.com. And we also, we work with state organizations. We've done a lot on a national level and it's free. It's, I believe COSIN has a toolkit in a model policy. Many states have toolkits that they work with. Pick 1, 2, or 3 as your framework. Take into consideration your school districts or your school's community norms. Bring together a stakeholder engagement group. And it may be each of the cabinet level departments. Like I said, there's curriculum and instruction, there's HR, there is business operations, special education. You may want to invite your label partners. You may want to invite your early adopters and talk about, here's a draft model policy. What questions would you have? What concerns do you have? And then you maybe do a revise. And then you bring it to your board for their consideration and adoption. And when you adopt a policy, you then turn around and have to communicate the implications, which is where a lot of training comes in. Not a lot of training. I mean, it could be one professional development session, but it's, here's your AI policy and here's the practical implications of this. So that's sort of the policy adoption process. But I think it's really critical because without a framework, you're going to have people who are either fear-based or you're going to have people going rogue. And then are your students really getting an equitable education if one classroom is using AI and the other teacher is too afraid to use it?
Right. Or another teacher actually has active classroom policies against using it. Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, which is certainly something that we see. So I want to take a half a step back on that question that you just, or answer you just provided, and say that collaborative sort of multi-lens model, I think, is just great for all policy creation. And too often I see, National School Board Association has their policy handbook that they hand to the states. And the states add a few little things and they hand that down to the districts, and the districts take it and like, poof, we've got our policy handbook. And it's like, good. It fails to address what I think a very important piece that you pointed out, Gretchen, which is the local school policy or the local school culture, right? And school or district culture and community. So that's great. That's great. Thank you.
I have some examples on that, Alex, of how local culture can impact. So surveillance systems are being upgraded to incorporate AI. I happen to live on the border of the United States and Mexico, and we have people who are very concerned about their identity or their student's identity, has license plate readers built in. I mean, just the level of Big Brother in some communities is more concerning maybe than others. Or I work with some school districts that are using they are currently evaluating which positions can be replaced or made more efficient with AI. And they are doing it across all job descriptions in the entire district. An example would be translation services. They feel like rather than have a translator per language, per document, maybe we first do a first draft. I said, you can't replace humans altogether. You still need somebody to do the review of the initial work product that AI spits out. But they said, maybe only one person needs to be doing that review versus the 4 translators we have. So in the future, there could be scenarios where jobs are eliminated. That is really going to be important to your labor union. And as you all might know, in different communities, labor unions play a more active role than others. And so again, there's just real specific community issues, cultural bias, things of that nature that really need to be taken into consideration.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Thank you.
I think that so Alex, we've probably had 5 or 6 experts on AI in our podcast history here, and every one of them interesting. None of them talking about these topics. This is stuff I've not considered, and I consider myself kind of a smart guy, but I've not even considered, like, when you start eliminating jobs or make it, we talk about being more efficient, but that means something when it comes to people's livings and livelihood.
Well, and eliminating access too. So if I make a policy that says we are not embracing AI, let's just pretend, right? I'm at a school district. We're not going down that road. We are not going to use it in the classrooms with students. If I am in an affluent community, that is not as big of a hindrance to students. They will probably have access to it at their home through other experiences. Like when Gretchen earlier said, like that future ready workforce, those students will still have opportunities. If I am in a district where my students lack access to resources outside of the classroom, I have seriously hindered their ability to compete in that future world market. So I think when we make these policies, when you said that, Gretchen, it's just like that big moment of, it's not just about, I want to lock this down, it's going to make my life so much easier, I'm not worried about it. What are the implications for our staff? What are the implications for our students? What are the implications for the greater community if I just take that policy that started at the national level and trickled its way down and photocopy it and put it in my binder? Have I really considered who I serve? Is it serving my community?
Bob, and also to respond to where I think you were going with that question and that comment, that you've met with a lot of AI professionals and these are issues you haven't seen yet. I go to a lot of ed tech conferences, and it is a lot of, here's what AI can do. I'm not a computer engineer. I'm a lawyer. And my job is to be the voice of really the school board. Where's the potential legal liability? And that's a lens that not a lot of people, but I translate it into practical advice. But really the question is, no one's walking around going, how can this all go south? What are the potential problems other than me? And it's not, and people usually don't want to hear from the Debbie Downer, but that's my job, is to make sure we're implementing it responsibly. And how can, it's easy to be razzle dazzled and wowed by AI and everything it can do for you, but somebody has to say, hey, school district, hold on, here's the 5 things you should be looking for. Here's the guardrails you should be putting in place. And that's where I think we're trying to be really proactive and think ahead down the road of what the potential problems might be so that we can address them at the outset.
It's interesting because we didn't talk about this earlier, but I'm also the board president for CUE, which is the ed tech affiliation in California and Nevada. And we're talking about this a lot too. So we have our conference in March. I think we have over 50 sessions on AI. I'm super excited that we have this many people coming. But what we've added this year, our amazing executive directors, a jump start before the conference as well. Like, let's give you the background. Let's do some of this work before the teachers just come in and start saying, here's all the things, right? And I want to do all the things. And we really need to be mindful of that. And it goes back to that early adopter policy. If I'm going to send you to this conference, what trust do I have with you that you're not just on Monday morning going to start using that tool? What you're going to do on Monday morning is you're going to give me a call or send me an email that says, here are the things I saw at the conference that I'm excited about. Can we have a conversation about possible implications? Can somebody call Gretchen at F3 and make sure that I'm good with this? Whatever it is, you don't want to say don't, like Gretchen said, we don't want to say don't, but what we want to say is be responsible.
This actually kind of loops me back to one of my earlier data privacy questions, right? And so, what kind of criteria should schools and districts sort of be thinking about? Because Bob mentioned the Ohio data privacy law, which is slightly different from the Minnesota, which is different from the California, and these states are coming up with these policy laws or guidelines, if not laws, all the time, and then various districts do. So, like, we have a professional learning management system that we sell, and we just had to go through the UDIP process, which is the data privacy process at LAUSD, to say, this specific tool meets that criteria. And the way that this happened is because we bundle some of our online professional development with sales to districts. And when it came, a principal at LAUSD said, hey, is this tool on our UDIP list? Has it been approved? And the answer was no. So we had to spend 3 months to go through the process for them to be satisfied that the data that was in that system was properly protected, which it was, knock on wood. But, the schools weren't allowed to use it until then. Let me tell you, the UDIP process that LAUSD has is a whole other universe compared to what most districts are doing. What should they be doing, and where should it fit in that spectrum, and why?
Well, now you're talking my day job. This is what I do every day, is do data privacy review of software terms and conditions. So including AI. And so the way it works there are federal, national student data privacy laws, and then some states have adopted state data privacy laws. I work with some national organizations that have made a model student data privacy agreement to try to streamline that process. Some states, state of California, has a model student data privacy agreement to try to streamline that process so that school districts, yes, the Student Data Privacy Consortium. And so, and then in California, it's run by CITE, California IT and Education. And so they have a model agreement, and we drafted it, and so that's not a plug. It may be another format, but the idea is, how can we streamline this for school districts? And so you would need to bridge the gap between maybe the federal standards and your own states. But the idea is that you have an internal vetting process, that they know to stop and ask the question. I mean, step number one is, what data is being collected? How's it being reshared? Who do I ask within my organization? Do I know that I should be concerned about data privacy? And then most school systems have a person or a team that their job is to see. Most of them have a white list of apps and tools that have already been vetted and approved. Or there's this national registry or a state registry where somebody on a statewide level may have already gone through and said, is this data privacy compliant? Because not every school has the resources to hire a lawyer to vet the terms and conditions of every single software platform. And I will tell you, I'm general counsel of CITE, California IT and Education. I'm negotiating right now with Google, with Amazon, with Salesforce, so schools don't have to. I mean, that's the objective. They have the means and the legal resources to make a safe product for schools. But I will tell you, in the space of AI, there's such a rush to market that they're not stopping and thinking necessarily about the implications on student data privacy. They think, well, that's the school's problem. We're going to let them address that. So that's why schools still need to be real vigilant.
Purchasing policy for districts too, right? When you talk, Gretchen, about all the stakeholders, is a lot of times people don't think, or like, oh, this isn't an IT. This is something for HR. We're going to run through this. But where am I in that flow? Right? Let me vet. I don't care what it is. Before business signs off on that check, do they see my signature somewhere that says, I have vetted this, I've gone to site, I've looked at whatever it is? I think a lot of times we're in such silos, and a lot of things get purchased, as I'm sure you've experienced, Alex, and then we have to stop. Or even worse is like, go take stuff out. Like, oh my gosh, we've already rolled this out. I've done installs before where then it's had to sit because it didn't go through proper process, right? Okay, hold on. And teachers are upset. I didn't get trained on this, or why is this here? And so it's bigger. And I love, Gretchen, at the beginning, talking about all the different people that need to be at the table. Purchasing is part of that, and making sure that we're part of that process.
And I think that we need a really key message that goes out to staff and administrators is free isn't free. So sometimes teachers don't ask permission because it's free. It's not going to cost my district anything. Well, it could cost them in a big old lawsuit, but often free tools, that company's it's not a philanthropy. They're making money somehow. And usually it's either advertising to students or taking their data and selling it, both which are legal for students. And so I know teachers aren't trying to violate their privacy, and they're not trying to get themselves in trouble. They think, oh, it's a free tool and look how cool it is. So just having that stop and ask before you app mindset is really important. Like, what's my school system's vetting and review process? Because I want to make sure I run this up the flagpole.
And we can't take a year to vet these things too. So on IT, ed tech, whoever that is, we have a responsibility to be on top of things, to stay current and be able to turn that information over fast, or they will stop asking us. If they have to wait a year to get my response, they're not going to do it at all. So we have with great knowledge comes great responsibility or something. I don't know, but.
Gretchen, you're speaking my language. I tell my schools all the time, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. You and your students are. So, and it's true. And we, in this post-COVID world of we rushed out to get these free tools to teach when we had to do it from home. We've never pulled back. And I think that's where we're seeing some of this legislation and finally some thoughtfulness put into, okay, what are we putting in front of students and what are we putting student information into? Now, I want to talk about the course. So the two of you offer a course, and I'm going to see if I got this right. We'll link this in our show notes. The cost of this course, and if you haven't figured out that it's worth the money by just listening to these two, I can't help you. But they tell me the cost is $65 normally. Ridiculously cheap already. But we have the discount code for 50% off is learning with a capital L. If you enter that, you get a 50% discount. I will be signing up as soon as we're done here. So please take that into account. If you're a Q member, you already have access to this through the Q website. So I implore you, my fellow tech directors and educators, to go check this out. It is the technology of our time. As Laura said earlier, it is coming faster and faster. And the best way to stay out in front of it is to learn ourselves.
Exactly.
Yep.
This is step one, the legal and ethical. This gets you going. And there are other courses as well as you start to learn the tool, but get that foundation in place. Understand what you're doing before you sign up for it.
Excellent. So we're getting close to the end of our episode, and we have a question that we ask all of our guests, and we'd love to ask you guys as well. So who is your favorite teacher and why?
7th grade, Mr. Vent taught Spanish. 8th grade, I had him for Spanish, social studies, and I was a teacher's assistant because I loved him so much. The reason he was my favorite teacher is honestly, he was innovative with a chalkboard. If you could just think back to, no technology, I'm sharing my age a little bit, but he valued students and he valued innovation, but I felt seen and heard and appreciated. And I think it was the first time in my school career that I had that experience.
I would say one of my favorite teachers is probably one of my children's teachers. My children's teacher, they had a teacher named Mr. Maxon in the 4th grade, and those are such critical development years. And he treated them like adults, and he taught them soft skills. He'd make them stand up when an adult walked in the room. He made the boys and girls sit next to each other and look each other in the eye when they communicated. And as awesome as technology is, we want to make sure that students don't lose their ability to communicate and, treat each other respectfully and all those great things. But he was an incredibly innovative teacher as well, and really embraced being open and being an early adopter. So it's bridging that gap. And it was the type of teacher who I saw make an impact on my children's life, for the rest of their life. And that's the beauty of what teachers can do. I also want to share that we have a number of free legal resources dedicated to AI and education technology on our law firm website, f3law.com. And I encourage you all to take advantage of it and reach out if you need us as a resource or have any follow-up questions.
That's awesome.
Something new and something old there for us, Alex. The first time we've had somebody talk about a student, a child's teacher is the new thing. The old thing is I win again.
Bob and I have a wager that's not even a wager because I lose so frequently.
Every time is what he means.
I got like 2. Guys, thanks so much for joining us today. I can't believe how fast the time went. That was really a fun conversation and a really important one as well. So thank you so much for joining us. And I hope to see you guys. Well, I will see you, Laura, I'm sure, at Q.
I'm excited. Yes.
And I hope to see you guys out at conferences.
Okay, Alex, that was a lot again. And I love that we had 2 people and they work so well together. Like they completed each other's sentences, much like us, Alex, of course. They gave us both sides, the academic and the legal, on all the topics. But that's what I got out of it. What did you get out of it?
I love the whole thing. The policy process was amazing, but I think the nugget that I got the most value out of was that need for an early adopters policy, right? If you're going to allow some of your teachers, and you want to encourage some of your teachers to have that sort of pioneering entrepreneurial spirit, that's great. But AI introduces some unique risks that are presented right away at the beginning. And so I liked it not only because it provided those protections, but it also gives you an opportunity to treat and work with those early adopters differently and give them the sort of special attention that they deserve, because they're really serving the overall mission of the program as well as the technology department.
I agree, and I think it brings them into the fold, right? You're not part of the problem. Sometimes tech directors make the early adopters are the problem, not part of the solution. So you bring them into the fold, and they show you what they're doing, and they share what they think are problems or what advantages there are. So even not just in AI, even though the stakes are higher in AI, but not just in AI.
Right.
Do we need these programs?
No, culturally, it's the right thing to do. These guys were great. What a wonderful opportunity to kind of learn and grow and just connect with people who work in education all the time. So that was a lot of fun. Thanks, Bob.
Learning Through Technology, a K-12 EdTech podcast, is brought to you by STS Education, a Pacific OneSource company. To learn more about how educators can leverage technology to drive successful educational outcomes, check us out at www.stsed.com. Connect with us by searching for Learning Through Technology in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or anywhere else podcasts are found. And click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. On behalf of the team at STS Education, thanks for joining us.